From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning and happy Monday, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast, a packed show for all y'all this Monday morning. And again, sorry for the missed release on the Threat Locker episode over the weekend. We had a little technical difficulty, so we're going to be airing it next weekend right before Black Hat, which I think is perfect timing, by the way, like the best timing ever. And you'll hear from our friends at Threat Locker later in the show today because we've got a lot to talk about. But before we get started on this morning's show, join me for a little tradition. Right? I mean, it's Monday afternoon here in Israel. Next week, this time, we'll all be at Hacker Summer Camp in Las Vegas, Nevada. But until then, I've got my double espresso. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. So good. Coffee here is just unbelievably well. All right. We're going to start with data breaches this morning because there's a few of them we need to talk about. The first one is Allianz Life, confirming that the PII for the majority of its 1.4 million customers was exposed in a data breach that occurred earlier this month. Now, for whatever reason, we missed this data breach. I'm just going to say it outright. When I saw the story as we were getting ready for the show today, I was like, Allianz got hacked and we missed it? How did that happen? So we've had to tune up a little bit of our research here at the show. The threat actors, according to Allianz Life, were able to obtain personally identifiable data related to the majority of Allianz Life's customers, including their financial professionals and select Allianz Life employees using a social engineering technique. Now, for those of you who may think we're hearing a lot about social engineering, wasn't this solved? Well, theoretically, we've solved social engineering through training, right? But that's not the case. Social engineering has gotten so good, partially thanks to AI, partially thanks to the honest to God truth that any honest practitioner could look you in the eye and say, humans are the weakest link. A human's desire at work is to help whoever they're talking to because that's their job. Their job is to empower the business to do business. And at times, threat actors take advantage of that. Can you block it? If you end commerce, because at the end of the day, we all help each other. That is what we do. When I call the help desk is trying to help me solve a problem. Now they've got to follow procedure, but if procedure was followed and yet somehow this still happened, then one must review the procedure, not the human impact, not the human action to that. So here we understand that social engineering still remains an issue. The investigation is ongoing, and they began the process of reaching out to individuals impacted with dedicated resources to assist them. Allianz Life is a U.S.-based provider of annuities and life insurance to over 1.4 million Americans. The company is owned by Allianz SC, the company headquartered in Frankfurt, Germany, I believe, serving more than 128 million customers. Allianz has not answered questions. However, Bleeping Computers learned that the attack could have been conducted by Shiny Hunters. Shiny Hunters were behind some of the Power School attacks, including Santander, Ticketmaster, AT&T, Advanced Auto Parts, Neiman Marcus, and Silence. Now, here they say it's Snowflake's attacks. It's not. Snowflake was not responsible for this breach. Snowflake's had nothing to do with this breach. I'm going to say it again, because whenever I see it on a presentation, I muck the person who puts Snowflake on their presentation. Snowflake was not breached. There was no compromise of any Snowflake system, nor anything of Snowflake. Snowflake customers were breached at their Snowflake's environment. So if someone hacks your AWS, was AWS breached or were you breached? If the answer was you, then you're absolutely correct and stop using Snowflake. Because the security people at Snowflake are top notch. Some of the best people I've met in my career. Great people being thrown under the bus by really, really poor reporting and clickbait stuff. What happened at Snowflake was very, very simple. A bunch of customers didn't have MFA enabled. Snowflake didn't enforce it. Should they have some responsibility to that? Yes, absolutely. But is it their breach? Nope. You're reusing username and passwords. That's kind of like classic cyber hygiene 101. Don't reuse username and passwords, right? We're all guilty of it. So they reused it. Attackers were able to get in. End of story. So Just so we know that. Shiny hunters were behind that. Obviously, they impersonate IT support personnel. That's what they do. They're very, very good at it. They speak fluent English. So a lot there. So those guys apparently are behind this breach that has not been authenticated as of yet. When it does become known, we'll let you know. NASCAR confirming a data breach after the March cyber attack that we talked about here in the show. NASCAR is warning customers this week that the data breach caused by the cyber attack in March did compromise some customer information. Law enforcement was notified. Cybersecurity were hired. The investigation to determine unauthorized access. An unauthorized actor accessed certain files on the company's network between March 31st and April 3rd. So the breach notification letters were sent out to victims on July 24th, and victims are being given 1 year of credit monitoring. We don't know how many people that is. However, NASCAR. So I'm sure it's a lot of people. So they've began notifying there. Now we move away from active breaches to what's actually happening with the SharePoint tool shell zero-day exploit chain. We now know that a China-based hacking group is deploying Warlock ransomware on some of these servers. Shadow servers currently tracking 420 SharePoint servers that are still remain exposed online and remain vulnerable to these attacks. Although Microsoft has observed the actor deploying Warlock and Lockbit ransomware in the past, Microsoft is currently unable to confidently assess the threat actor's objectives. You can't assess the threat actor's objectives? There's multiple objectives here. It's the Chinese. Part of it is geopolitical. They're trying to steal data. They love abusing you. They've been abusing you since SolarWinds. Microsoft, you've been sleeping at the wheel a little bit. Additionally, and there's another aspect to it. You're writing DoD code in China. I want to know who made that decision. I think Senator Khan's congressional subpoenas there of understanding who in Microsoft made this decision should be given to every single customer of Microsoft. 100%. Microsoft began observing Storm 2603, deploying ransomware using those vulnerabilities. Microsoft names them Storm 2603. They have other names by other threat actors, by other companies that are tracking them, all within China. Apparently, once they breached the victim's network, they used Mimikatz to extract plaintext credentials from the LSAS SS memory. They then moved laterally with the PS exec and the Impact Toolkit, executing commands via Windows management instrumentation and modifying group policy objects to deliver the ransomware across compromised systems. Customers should apply on-premise SharePoint server security updates immediately and follow the detailed mitigation guidance in the Microsoft blog. So obviously a lot of reports there. HHS, according to the Washington Post, was also breached part of this SharePoint issue there as well. So we'll see. And according to Bloomberg, systems that have already been attacked because of this zero-day as the U.S. Department of Education, the Rhode Island General Assembly, the Florida's Department of Revenue, as well as the networks of European and Middle Eastern governments. So we have that as well. And last week we reported the Department of Energy confirming the National Nuclear Security Administration was also breached. But that's not all China's doing. They're now seeing a Signia spotting a cyber espionage group tied to China, targeting VMware and F5 product vulnerabilities in a sophisticated and stealthy campaign. FireAnt, the group seen compromising virtualization and networking appliances to gain access to restricted and segmented environments. They're focusing on infrastructure. They're using compromised appliances for initial access, lateral movement, and persistence that have been observed leveraging virtualization hosts to access guest environments using unauthenticated guest-to-host commands and compromised credentials. As part of the analyzed intrusion, the group exploited CVE 2023-34048, a critical vCenter server vulnerability leading to unauthenticated remote code execution. Using the VPX user service account credential extracted from vCenter, the attackers then pivoted to connected ESXi hosts, deploying persistent backdoors across the environment. They then interacted with guest VMs, exploiting CVE 2023-20867, which is an ECXI flaw enabling unauthenticated host-to-guest operations. The attackers was also seen tunneling through Thrust's system to systematically bypass segmentation, gain access to isolated networks, and even establish cross-segment persistence. They exploited CVE 2022-1388 to compromise F5's load balancers in order to deploy web shells that enabled bridging between networks. So you see the sophistication coming from the Chinese. Don't for a second fall asleep on it. It's really, really significant. And it has the potential to really, really impact organizations. And again, as a simple business, you have no way of doing this. You have no way of knowing this, right? Like, you got to have good monitoring in place. You got to understand the TTPs and ISPs, and you got to know whether you're in the crosshairs of the Chinese. Assume you always are, and then work with your partners, work with your security partners in order to really build some good indicators of compromise and identify these types of threats. So that's really, really important there. We move to AI regulation because it's really, really critical. California's privacy regulator approving a watered down AI rules. And again, they're watering a lot of stuff down because we're going to talk about it in a minute. And if you've got TDS, you may want to tune out. So the most recent version of the proposed rules were released in May. They came under fire from privacy advocates and consumer watchdog who were incensed by key language changes, which greatly expanded circumstances under which a business can deploy ADMT. ADMT relies on artificial intelligence algorithms to make decisions. The rule allowing people to opt out not only covers decisions where the technologies replace or substantially replace human decision making. Previously, the language had been broader, covering technologies which substantially facilitated human decision making. The agency gave to companies, and the governor said, Justin Kluzoko of Consumer Watchdog, these rules will basically just formalize humans no longer being in the loop with regard to significant decisions being made in education, job, and healthcare. So there's that. But just a few days ago, the AI.gov website went live by President Donald J. Trump. We now know that there's an AI action plan to win the AI race with several executive orders. The three signed on July 23rd include the promoting the export of American IT technology stack, meaning building, having our allies and other nations build on the AI that the U.S. builds, having the U.S. lead it. Accelerating federal permitting of data center infrastructure in order to power AI, and preventing woke AI in the federal government. We're not going to address the third. We're going to talk about the first two because I try not to get very political here, but I do have to give credit where credit is due to the president. Furthermore, President Trump went on the record as saying the following, and I'm quoting the president here. We also have to have a single federal standard, not 50 different states regulating this industry of the future. The president continued to say you can't have one state holding you up. You can't have 3 or 4 states holding you up. You can't have a state with standards that are so high that it's going to hold you up. Meaning the president has now put it on the shoulders of Congress, of Speaker of the House Michael Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune, to go ahead and draft an AI bill, a federal AI bill that supersedes all other bills. And this is amazing news for cybersecurity practitioners. It's amazing news for everyone. Why? For 2 reasons. Could the appetite here be to federalize data privacy at the same token that they do AI and data breach notification? 2 bills that have had bipartisan support that have been sitting on the sidelines, just not getting passed. Could those be added to the same concept that this has? This is absolutely a great move by the president of the United States. Credit where credit is due. The president also indicated that in a few months, Meta, Amazon, Google, Microsoft are all investing $320 billion or more in data centers and AI infrastructure. NVIDIA has already committed $500 billion over the next 4 years around infrastructure and permitting. Again, the president here is releasing it. And then there's 3 pillars to the AI action plan that the president outlined, including infrastructure development, global AI exports, and AI dominance to get the entire world running on the backbone of American technology. And then obviously the third one, eliminating woke AI. So all in all, a good move by the White House there. It's being praised across the entire tech sphere, by the way. On the White House website, there's a bunch of remarks, there's articles, there's fact sheets being supported, whether it's coming from David Sachs or the entire tech industry. This seems to really resonate, and it's a good move by the president and the administration. We've wondered what they're doing around cyber, but seeing this around AI, we'll likely see that come around cyber security as well, especially as we wait for CISA director to get confirmed. We continued to move with BlackSuit ransomware gangs, darknet websites being seized by police. The operation happened on Thursday with more than 9 countries involved. The splash page replacing the gang's list of victims on its main Tor domain, as well as its private negotiation page, states these sites have been seized by the U.S. U.S. HSI, Homeland Security Investigations. It's part of a coordinated international operation. It features the logos of 17 law enforcement entities alongside Bitdefender giving pole position to Homeland Security Investigation, a part of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency that focuses on transnational crime. So if HSI has been involved, this likely has something to do with them where they were able to get it. The joint advisory described BlackSuit as having demands more than $500 million in extortion payments from its victims, which intentionally are believed to include Japanese medallion giant Kadokawa and Tampa Bay Zoo, as well as some more popular zoos across the U.S. So they're now taken down. Christina Marie Chapman, the 50-year-old woman from Arizona, was sentenced to 102 months in prison, almost 8 years, after pleading guilty to her involvement in the scheme that enabled North Korean IT workers to infiltrate 309 companies. Chapman was charged in May of 2024, together with a Ukrainian citizen named Alexander Didenko, with aggravated identity theft, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and conspiracy to commit money laundering, wire fraud, identity fraud, and bank fraud. Didenko ran an online platform known as Upwork and Sell, which was seized by the DOJ, which provided services allowing North Koreans to use false identities while hunting for remote IT positions. 3 other foreign nationals known only by their aliases Jiao Han, Heroin Ju, and Sun Chao Jin are also part of the same criminal complaint. According to court documents, Chapman hosted the North Korean IT workers' computers in her own home between October of 2020 and October of 2023, creating what is known as a laptop farm. The North Koreans were hired as remote software and application developers with multiple Fortune 500 companies, including aerospace and defense, a major television network, a Silicon Valley technology company, and even high-profile companies. So now she'll be spending 8 years thinking about that. And in patching news, Mitel announcing a critical severity vulnerability in their My Voice MX1 enterprise communication platform that could allow attackers to gain admin rights. No CV identifier has been assigned to the flaw, but Mitel has given it a 9.4 CVSS rating, and it could allow remote unauthenticated attackers to access user or admin accounts on the system. Mitel describes the security defect as an authentication bypass issue that exists because access controls are not properly implemented. The bug impacts MX1 version 7.3 to 7.8 SP1 and was addressed with the release of MXO 15711 _78 SPO and MXO -15711 _78 SP1 for MX versions 7.8 and 7.8 SP1 respectively. So you want to make sure you get those patched up. And hundreds of LG security cameras are vulnerable to remote hacking due to a recently discovered flaw that will not receive a patch. CISA letting essentially the entire country know that LG's Initech LNV5110R cameras are affected by an authentication bypass vulnerability that could allow attackers to gain admin access to the device. CVE 2025-7742 and is assigned the high severity rating. LG has notified and said the vulnerability cannot be patched as the product has reached end of life. So if you do have these cameras anywhere in your environment, you may want to rip them out and replace them. That's it for our show this Monday morning. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.